Hi there guys, Tom Quayle here, back again with another demo, and today I'm checking out the tube amp expander core from the wonderful guys at Boss. The tube amp expander is something that's been a really important part of my setup for quite a while now actually. I actually did the original video demo for Boss for that product and fell in love with it, and it's a huge part of this setup I've got behind me, in that I use it as my main attenuator and effects loop for all of the amps in this rack setup behind me. So as I switch between the amps, it's attenuating each of them, and it's taking the pedal board that I have down on the floor and running through the effects loop and distributing that effects loop to every single amplifier, which is amazing, especially for the amps like this that don't have an effects loop on board. So I'm very familiar with it. It's a great product, but it's very large, very heavy. It's quite complicated to use. And it has to sit in the rack because of its size and the fact that it's integrated into that setup. So the tube amp expander core is, as you can see, like a baby version of the original tube amp expander. It's much smaller, much lighter. It weighs 2.2 kilograms, I think, as opposed to about 16 on the original. It's quite a hefty beast. It needs to be because of what it is, but this is much smaller. And actually, if anything, this has more tech and more stuff built into it than the original in many ways. It's only missing a couple of features that most people out there probably wouldn't use unless you've got a huge range of amps like I do in this room. So we'll go through some of the specs here and why I think this might be a really good choice if you're looking for a tube amp expander, but you don't necessarily need something big and bulky and heavy. So this essentially is exactly the same kind of product. It's a reactive load box that attenuates or brings down the volume of your loud tube amps whilst retaining the sonic characteristics of if they were very loud, essentially. The original tube amp expander had 16 variable reactive loads built in, which is kind of insane. There's still no other product on the market that does that. And what that means is you can tailor the sound and the feel of the reactive load to match the way the amplifier would originally sound effectively if it wasn't plugged into a reactive load. So there were two switches that you could dial in on that to get 16 different types of reactive load to really grab the sound that you wanted. The tube amp expander core only has two. Now that might sound like a downgrade, but in reality, when I was using the original tube amp expander, there were only a couple of those reactive loads that I used, and the rest never really worked for my setup. And that's primarily because I have mostly high gain tube amps over there, so I would use a couple of different sounds. The reactive loads that are built into the tube amp expander core are the stack and the combo. Now in reality, that's going to cover 95% of what you need. You're either playing through a stack style setup with a head or you're playing through a combo, okay? In this instance, I've got a 100 watt plexi style amp here, which is one I built a couple of years ago with my good friend Dave Bronze, and it's plugged into this Zilla cab down here. And that's a stack style setup. And what it's going to give you is in the stack mode, you're going to have a thicker, tighter low end, and in the combo mode, it's a little bit less tight. You'll hear the difference shortly. But as opposed to constantly worrying about the fact that, oh, which of the 16 reactive loads do I want? You've only got two choices here. It makes life a lot easier, okay? So let's check out the two different settings on the reactive load, as I mentioned before, as opposed to the 16 on the original, which could get a little complicated. In stack mode, as I mentioned, you're going to get sort of a bigger thump on the low end, as you'd expect from, like, say, a 4x12 stack based setup. And then in combo, it's going to tame that a little bit more. So we'll do this with some power chords. I think the bass is cranked on the amp. Yes, it is. And we've got the super overdrive engaged down here for all the gain. So starting in stack mode, I have to be a little bit careful here because I'm going to destroy the front end of my audio interface here. So a nice tight low end on there with the delay, and then if I go over to combo, you can hear it's not as big on the low end. It's still tight, but we've lost some of that punch that we'd get from, say, a 4x12 stack style amplifier with the cab underneath. Just quickly back to stack again. And I do want you to hear that through the line out as well, because obviously that works the same through the line out. So that's the Celestion IRs. Also notice that is completely, there's no gap in the sound when you do that. So a little more subtle through the DI because we've not got the natural punch that you would get from, this is an oversized 2x12 cab, so we've got a little bit more punch, but you can hear the difference, and it's very easy to understand what that difference is. So with that said, when we're talking about reactive loads, there may be some of you guys out there who've had bad experiences with attenuators in the past because they've not been reactive. So historically, when I was younger, load boxes that attenuated or brought the volume down of your amp, they do this thing where they separate the power amp from the speaker. So the signal goes into the attenuator and then it doesn't have that natural impedance thing that happens between the power amp of an amplifier and it being directly connected to the speaker. That connection is separated by the attenuation that's happened. And so you lose a huge amount of the tone and feel of the amplifier. You get the benefit of it being quieter, but it just doesn't sound and feel like your amp. So people struggled with it, me too, historically. So a reactive load, which you would find in the tube amp expander and the tube amp expander core, recreates that impedance connection between the original speaker and the power amp. And so you don't have that tone and feel loss that you would get with old school attenuators that didn't have the reactive thing. So this is newer technology that enables you to retain the feel and touch and response of your amplifier. And you can hear it really when you start to play with dynamics and when you start to play with the volume control of the amp, all of the interaction that you get from the pickups, the pick, all the way through to the amplifier, the kind of tone stack in the amp, the gain stages with the tubes here, all the way through the attenuation and through into the speaker is all still there. So as I play through, at the moment I've got the super overdrive on, bridge pickup, volume on full, you know, loads and loads of gain. Let's bring the speaker in as well. So at the moment, masses of gain. As I start to roll the volume down and go to different pickups, you'll hear it responds beautifully. We don't lose anything in the connection between the fingers all the way through to the speaker. Amazing sustain, amazing feel, amazing dynamics. So reactive loads are definitely the way to go, and of course the tube amp expander original and core are both reactive loads, so you get the best of your amplifier whilst you get the benefits of being able to tame the volume. And of course, if you want, you can use the 30-watt power amp that's built in to increase the volume of a lower wattage amplifier, say a 5-watt amp. And if you want to use the original tube amp expander, you've got 100 watts of power amp on there to really make a quiet, great sounding tube amp, nice and loud on stage as well. Other than that, it's basically identical. So you've got 10 rigs that you've got on here, which can store any of the 10 presets that you want on the front of the unit. We'll go through why you would want presets shortly. You've got your input signal peak. So as I play, it's checking that we're not actually getting any clipping or anything onto the input stage of the tube amp expander from the amplifier. You've got your speaker out level, your line out level, your headphones out, which is super cool for silent practicing. And then you've got this extra control here called the air feel, which we'll go through in a bit when we talk about some of the new features. But other than that, it's built really, really well. It's the same kind of metal construction, metal front plate on here. There's no kind of cheap plastics. As I'm tapping this, you can hear it's metal. We've also got the dual stereo XLR outs on the back. So when I say dual stereo, what I mean is we've got left and right. So dual XLR output. So that's balanced with the ground lift on there. You've got the effects loop from the original as well that can be run in parallel or series with, it's got switchable line and instrument level on there as well, which is super cool. You've got a USB-C connection on the back as opposed to the old USB-A, which is really useful, and that also functions as an audio interface just like the original. So you're not really losing anything, and in terms of connectivity, you've also got the MIDI in on there, but now, unlike the original, which was all wired connections, you also now have a Bluetooth module that you can purchase for this as a separate purchase, plugs in the back, which gives you wireless connectivity for controlling the tube amp expander core via the app that can work on your any Bluetooth device basically, so iOS, Android, your tablets, whatever. I've got an iPhone down here that's plugged in, I'll show you the app shortly, and audio as well, so you can beam audio through this unit, and if you're running through a full range system, then you can actually you know, have full range backing tracks or whatever running through the system for practice or performance, which is super, super cool. If you want wired connectivity, you've got MIDI on there as well, but only the MIDI in this case, so not the MIDI out. So you really aren't losing many features at all in comparison to the original tube amp expander, but you've just got this much, much smaller unit here. Now there are a few new features. You've got the air feel on here as well. Now the air feel essentially, if I just turn down the speaker out here, so you're only hearing the DI, and I'm going to turn the air feel down, I am just going to use the app very briefly. If I just show this to you, there's the app, and I'm connected via Bluetooth here. If you don't have the Bluetooth unit, by the way, you can connect via USB to your Mac or PC. So I'm just going to go over to my signal chain here and turn off the delay. Oops, there we go, now you can see it, now the light's not reflecting. So the delay is off now, and now we've just got the dry signal going out to the DIs, and I'm using a couple of the Celestion IRs that are built in. It comes with 10 Celestion IRs built in, which the original didn't either, which is very cool. And this is what we've got. So that is a very dry sound. Now the air, what it's going to do is give you more of a like a cab in the room sound. So it's going to take those IRs or the inbuilt mics that you've got built in and cabs, and it's going to add like a room sound to it in a kind of very 3D manner. So if I dial some of this in, you'll hear we've got that space that the amp exists in now. And Boss are very good at this. If you've ever heard the Waza Air headphones, they're really good at, like, you know, giving you the sense of space with DI'd sounds, in that case in a pair of headphones. In this case, with a DI'd sound with 2 IRs. I did say 2, by the way, you can load up to 2 IRs at the same time now. And so if we dial this out a little bit so it's not quite as pronounced. Now there's something about that feels more interesting, fun, exciting, whatever adjective you want to use, to play, because it's located in space now as opposed to being very dry. That's not so much fun, and this is different to just using like a room reverb. There's other stuff going on as well in terms of the feel and response. It feels fantastic, really, really, really nice. Now you can go a little bit extreme. But again, it's a really, really nice kind of 3D space that sound is located in now. And that again can be stored as part of the preset and controlled via the app as well, or via USB, whatever you want to. But again, what I love about this, as opposed to the original tube amp expander, is that this can sit on your desk. It's smaller than most of the other stuff I have on my desk. I have synths, I've got a bunch of other stuff on there. This is really small, and I've got access to it just straight away. And I love, with any digital gear, I love the fact that I can get in there and control it like analog gear. And there's obviously analog and digital elements to this, and I can control them from here and have the combination of the app, which is really, really nice. I don't have to slide my chair over. I know this is massive first world problems, but when creativity is hitting, you don't want to be moving around the studio and kind of diminishing that creativity by having to move around and, you know, relocate yourself and then get back into the headspace again. This is immediate, just on the desk like this. It's very, very cool. And of course it makes it very portable as well. Another new feature is the Mix Assist, which wasn't on the original. Mix Assist basically takes the frequencies that would generally cause problems in a mix and diminishes those frequencies or removes them, kind of attenuates them to make the sound a little bit better for a mix. Now, when it comes to just listening to the sound in the room like this, You may find that you don't like it as much with the mix assist on, but of course, a lot of people, because of the size of this unit, will be using it live and also for tracking whilst they're listening to or playing back to tracks within the studio or, as I say, live on stage. So having the mix assist there means that you don't have to do as much EQing, which is really nice. So I'll show you what that does. There is no mix assist control on the front panel, but I do have it. If you look in the top corner, I haven't got enough hands to show you, but hopefully on the app there, you can see where the mix assist is on the top right underneath where it says IR. And there's three types, which will do different attenuation of different frequencies. So we'll switch it on, and then we have this transient control, okay, which will attenuate or boost certain frequencies to fit with whatever you need in the mix. So here it is off. And there it's on, and you can hear it's poking through. Now, guitars poke through with mids, basically. So you can hear it's making the mids a bit more nasal so that it pokes through in the mix, and probably is attenuating some bass as well. So you're going to cut through. As I increase the transient, you hear the high end or the upper mids are now poking out even more as well. Whereas with it off, it's much more scooped, which is not going to cut as well. It does sound great on its own. It's a really nice sound, but when you turn the mix assist on, you're going to cut through much better. Now, just to show you the other types really quickly, if I'll pull the transients out. This is type 3, less low end, and then type 2. So you can pick the one that fits best for the particular scenario you find yourself in. And as I say, it's really, really easy to find because it's just there in the app. You don't need to plug any cables in, just use the Bluetooth adapter and you're good to go, basically. Of course, that is possible via USB if you want to do that too. So that's some of the new features, basically, that you don't find on the original that are really useful for sculpting your tone in different environments. Again, those can all be stored as part of a preset. If we look at the actual app itself now, let's put my guitar down a second. I need to make sure this is not capturing the lights here. This has also been updated hugely with a much more modern interface. So you've got the option here of using this graphical UI to control all the different mic settings. So there's two different settings. Effectively, you've got, if I just tilt it that way, you've got your standard cabs and mics that were built into the original TuneBump Expander. And there was no ribbon mic originally, but it's now been updated with a Royer style ribbon mic as well. So that's in there. You basically just tap on the mic here. You can select the different mics. So you can see we've got like an SM57, 421, a condenser mic, a couple of condenser mics and a Royer 121. Select the mic that you want. And then underneath that, you've got the position, which is done in centimeters from the central cone of the speaker, and you've got the distance as well. So it's very easy to use in that regard. You can also grab the mics and move them around on the GUI here as well if you want to, which is a nice addition, obviously, that we've not seen from the guys at Boss before. And then you've got your level control here for the different mics. So it's a very easy to use GUI. And then if you tap this button here, you go over to IR mode. And here you can select from either user IRs, so you can load up to 64 IRs on here, which is a lot, actually, that's great. And then if you tap on the cab here, you've got 10 Celestian IRs. Now, in my opinion, these are probably some of, if not the best IRs on the market, which is why everybody's using them now. They're a really, really great set of IRs. And you've got 4x12, 2x12, and 1x12, some open back, some closed back with different mics. And you can choose up to 2 of them at the same time. You can even time correct your IRs as well. So that's a nice feature. So if you don't time correct your IRs, you'll get phasing issues, which you don't want, obviously, so you can time correct those using the dial underneath. Set the level. Again, all stored as a preset with the mix assist and also the air control on there as well. So really powerful in that regard. And then if we switch over to the second tab here, we've got our signal chain. And this will be familiar to anybody who's used any Boss products before, because it looks very similar to, say, the GX100 or the the GT Core stuff, GT1000, sorry, or the GT1000 Core stuff, which is on my pedal board currently. You've got this signal chain that you can move between, and in this case it's a fixed signal chain, and what's cool about this is you've got both for the speaker out and for the line out, just like the original tube amp expander, you can send delay, compression and reverb and a parametric or graphic EQ per output. So each of the speaker and line output can have their own parametric EQ, and they can share a global EQ, or you can set them to be global in terms of if you alter one parametric EQ or graphic EQ for one output, it's mirrored in the other. Now currently I have none of this on at all, but I do have a global EQ cutting off anything above 5K, because it just sounds good at this volume level, okay? So I can come through and say, turn the delay on here, okay? And I can go through to delay and set this to be whatever I want. I've got a panned stereo delay here, which obviously is going to work panned through the DI, which I'll let you hear, and is also going to come through the speaker out if I so choose. The way I would do this, as well as all my settings for the delay, is if I come across here, I've got independent outputs for each of the speaker and line outs for each of these things, basically, so you can actually change where it's going. So here, for instance, line out, speaker out for the reverb. So you can change them independently, which is super, super cool. And then here is our line out EQ and our speaker out EQ. And then you've got your level controls as well, which are on the front panel, which is really nice. So now we've got the delay on. Oh, that's made my fingers really stiff holding that phone. I won't be able to play now. There's the delay, and that's just coming through the DI at the moment. Very nice delay. The effects are very high quality in the original tube amp expander and the core as well. Now, let's just bring in, I'm going to turn the line output down and let you hear the speaker output. And one thing that's very, very important with this is this attenuator is not stepped. It's a continuous control. So the great thing about that is with stepped attenuators, which some of the products I have in the studio do have, it's very hard for each individual amplifier to find the sweet spot in terms of where it starts to sound good. So you will always find, as you bring the speaker control up on any attenuator, you're going to hear a little bit of electromagnetic kind of, I don't know if it's electromagnetic, but kind of noises happening. Whenever you take a very high voltage amplifier signal and attenuate it, you can hear all sorts of things going on inside the unit. That's completely normal, but it sounds like high-end fizz. So you need to get the speaker high enough that you can't hear that anymore, or use headphones. And there's a point just there where it kicks in and the body of the sound appears. With stepped controls, often you find that you've got nothing, bit of fizz, and then suddenly it's too loud. In this instance, you can really tailor this. And you do have, by the way, a switch on the back to tailor it to the output level of the amplifier. And this will accept anything up to 100 watts. And you can switch it between, I think it's 15 watts, maybe 50 watts and 100 watts. I can't quite remember what the lower wattage is, but you've got low. Basically what that will do is if you take a 15 watt amplifier and you plug it in, it's going to be nice and loud when you switch the attenuation all the way up, because there's a 30 watt power amp in here, which is going to amplify the signal as well, whilst retaining the sonic characteristics and feel of the amplifier. If you plug a 100 watt head in, switch it to 100 watts, and you can then make your 100 watt head very, very quiet whilst not losing the sonic and feel integrity of the signal, which is great. So it's very versatile. So I'm just going to turn this up a little bit, and you'll hear the delays are now coming through the speaker output. And they sound fantastic. That's mic'd up down here with a with an SM57. I have not used the Roya today. Too many cables. So it's the SM57 down there. And the delay's coming through the speaker output as well, which is awesome. Now I could change that if I wanted to. I could send the reverb through the DI only, or just through the speaker output, whatever I want to do. This sounds great. I know what this amp sounds really, really well because I've used it a lot, especially with the different attenuators. And as I say, I used the tube amp expander, the original one, as my main attenuator. This sounds just as good. All the feel is there, all the dynamics, everything. If I turn I've got super overdrive on down here, it's boss day. If I roll the volume down, Feels great. It's really, really, really fantastic. The addition of the power amp in here is really important. So as I mentioned before, if you're using low wattage amplifiers, you can boost them. It is worth knowing that because this is a smaller unit with a smaller power supply, the power amp that's built in is also smaller. So if you needed the 100 watt amplifier that was built into the original tube amp expander, that to really amplify lower wattage amplifiers for live use, then maybe this wouldn't be the one for you, but I think that's quite rare. 30 watts is still quite loud, and a lot of people will be using this with higher wattage amplifiers in order to attenuate them. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but it is worth knowing. And it's also worth knowing that this does come, if I just turn that down, it does come with its own power supply as well, which is like a high quality Boss power supply that's a smaller barrel style connection rather than like a kettle lead style or an IEC cable, but that's because it's a smaller unit, okay? Doesn't make any noise, it's very, very quiet. When you turn it on, there's a little fan noise and then that goes away and you don't hear anything else other than the electrostatic kind of electromagnetic noises that all attenuators make. And yeah, it's a really, really fantastic piece of kit that for me, I think a lot of people will want this because they get 90% of the features of the tube amp expander, but can throw it into a sort of large gig bag and then basically go and play live or in the studio with a very small unit with high quality attenuation, effects built in, IRs built in, the audio interface features, you know, really great. You can record straight from this unit. You don't even need to take an audio interface, which is absolutely awesome. So it is really quite impressive that they've managed to take all of that tech and distill it into something much, much smaller. And half the price, that's very important as well. Half the size, half the price, but still more features, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this may well at some point replace my original tube amp expander because it's going to be so much more useful to have this on the desk than have it rack mounted. And I don't really use the other features that would be missing from the original. I certainly don't use the 100 watt power amp because my tube amp expander is racked up and is not used live. So that's a very interesting kind of thing for me to think about. So that is the Boss Tube Amp Expander Core. Check out the link in the description below and that will take you over to Boss's website where you can learn more information about the unit and check out some more video demos as well from the guys at Boss themselves. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons as ever and hit the bell notification icon to make sure you never miss any more content. Of course, check my links down below if you want to support me and what I do on the channel. My name's Tom Quayle. Thanks to Boss for letting me check out the Boss Tube Amp Expander Core, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.